Hello and welcome. You're watching Good Morning India. I'm Gargi Rawat. Stay with us for all the news you need to start your day with. We'll take a look at the poll of polls and what the results from that has shown so far in terms of what many of the polls, exit polls, have said as the last phase of elections ended yesterday. Also, we'll get you all the latest on Ukraine. The worry remains about the Indians who are stuck in Sumy and whether safe corridors can be created for the citizens. Let's take a look at the headlines we're tracking at this hour. The BJP keeps Uttar Pradesh. Aadmi Party wins Punjab, Goa, Uttarakhand and Manipur too close to call, say the poll of exit polls. The Russia-Ukraine war hits India hard. Markets have crashed. The rupee hits an all-time low at 77 rupees to the dollar. Crude oil hits $130, the highest in 13 years. Russia's envoy says Russia will carry out a ceasefire on Tuesday and open humanitarian corridors from Kiev, Chernigov, Sumy and Mariupol, but it's subject to Ukraine's approval. India tells the UN Security Council that India is deeply concerned that despite our repeated urgings, the safe corridor for our students stranded in Sumy have not materialized. Hello and welcome. You're watching Good Morning India. I'm Gargi Rawat. Stay with us for all the news you need to start your day with. We'll take a look at the poll of polls and what the results from that has shown so far in terms of what many of the polls, exit polls, have said as the last phase of elections ended yesterday. Also, we'll get you all the latest on Ukraine. The worry remains about the Indians who are stuck in Sumy and whether safe corridors can be created for the citizens. Let's take a look at the headlines we're tracking at this hour. The BJP keeps Uttar Pradesh. Aadmi Party wins Punjab, Goa, Uttarakhand and Manipur too close to call, say the poll of exit polls. The Russia-Ukraine war hits India hard. Markets have crashed. The rupee hits an all-time low at 77 rupees to the dollar. Crude oil hits $130, the highest in 13 years. Russia's envoy says Russia will carry out a ceasefire on Tuesday and open humanitarian corridors from Kiev, Chernigov, Sumy and Mariupol, but it's subject to Ukraine's approval. India tells the UN Security Council that India is deeply concerned that despite our repeated urgings, the safe corridor for our students stranded in Sumy have not materialized. Now, with the UP elections ending, the exit polls are out. The 7th and final phase of voting in UP concluded Monday, and with the assembly elections in the 5 states. So here are the exit poll predictions. For Uttar Pradesh, the BJP is likely to win in UP and the Aadmi Party may bag more seats in Punjab. A poll of exit polls has indicated after the ending of voting, it predicted a hung house in both Goa and Uttarakhand and BJP emerging as the largest party in Manipur. Now all the health warnings, of course, exit polls are not always right. They don't get it right, and that's been proven time and again. The final results will be revealed only on the 10th of March when counting of votes takes place. So let's focus on Punjab. Exit polls have predicted a clear victory for the Aadmi Party in Punjab, with the scale of the party's victory varying across various surveys. Several surveys predict Arvind Kejriwal's Aadmi Party, which is in power in Delhi, getting a landslide victory. The surveys also predicted that the ruling Congress will finish a distant second in the state, followed by the Shiromani Akali Dal, which had allied with the BSP. Now, if the Aadmi Party comes to power in Punjab, it would be a massive change, as Mr. Kejriwal's party would run a full state, unlike in Delhi, which is a union territory. A poll of exit polls in Goa indicated that both the BJP and Congress will end up with 16 seats in Goa, each leading the state for another hung assembly. Goa has a 40-member house and may be heading for that hung assembly, which we saw in 2017 as well. An aggregate of 9 exit polls have predicted. Data indicates both BJP and the Congress will end up with 16 seats. The kingmaker will be Mamata Banerjee's Trinamool Congress, which is contesting in the coastal state for the first time in an attempt to build a pan-India image. Aam Aadmi Party too is contesting in Goa. Now for Uttarakhand, a poll of polls has predicted that a close contest will emerge between the BJP and Congress with 34 and 32 seats respectively. Uttarakhand has 70 seats. A poll of exit polls for the Uttarakhand Assembly indicates a hung house with no party crossing the required majority of 36 seats. An average of 10 available exit polls shows this close contest between the BJP and Congress, with the BJP in fact having that slight edge. All right, well, to discuss these poll of exit polls and the exit polls, we're now joined by Dr. Geeta Bhatt, a political analyst and someone who supports the BJP. We're also joined by Badri Narayan, political analyst, social scientist, and someone who supports the Samajwadi Party. Geeta Bhatt, first to you, what is your opinion of what the exit polls have shown so far?
Well, Gargi, first of all, a very happy International Women's Day to all your viewers.
Thank you.
Definitely the exit polls, they show a positive picture for the Bharatiya Janata Party. And in 4 states, one thing is, Gargi, clear that especially with respect to Uttar Pradesh, where we have seen the kind of, political happenings which took place just before the polls were about to go. And looking at the, the political, social context of the state, it is very clear that the people have taken note of the governance and of the beneficiaries, the labhartis, those who have been benefited, especially by the ration scheme. And I think it is the delivery which has actually made the difference, where during the pandemic times, in such adverse circumstances, when especially people from the lower middle class, when they were not able to go out to work, these ration kits which were reaching to the people, that is what has that there have been many interactions with the people out there, and a large number of them had come out and said that they do acknowledge that how the government has been coming out and helping out people during those difficult times. And in fact, in spite of all the criticism, it was seen that how the Chief Minister was reaching out in all the districts and trying to see what are the type of medical facilities which are available. Although there has been there has been a counter from the opposition that not much was done, but the fact is that hardly any representatives of the other political parties were seen on the ground doing anything.
So you feel it is the work done by the government that's managed to, get across all the anti-incumbency, the farmer agitation, joblessness, and again, these are the exit polls, but you feel that what they're predicting shows that the government has done good work on the ground, and that's something which people have seen, and that's what they're voting on, despite even COVID and the pandemic and the kind of deaths we saw during that time.
Well, yes, these were very adverse times, Gargi, no doubt about it. But it was irrespective. I mean, we have seen, those which are considered as a developed nation, how they were dealing with the pandemic. It was an unprecedented, they were unprecedented circumstances which were a challenge for any government, and rather every government across the world. Even despite
let me get Badri Narayan in, sir. Your view of what exit polls have predicted. It's been it was looking a lot closer in terms of the kind of noise we saw on during the political campaigning. But the predictions of the exit polls still show that a majority of the people still supporting the BJP.
Yeah, Gargi, first of all, I would like to say that I am not a supporter of any political party. I am a neutral social scientist who understand the election, try to understand the election. And you know that this all the exit polls came. They are saying two things. One thing is that the narrative or the people narrative of the dissent and is now being co-opted by policies, by implementation of program, by the leader image. So there was dissent, there was a complaints, but those complaints couldn't transfer in the vote, couldn't convert in the vote. If we see if you believe on this, all the exit poll came for UP, and you know, Geeta ji is very right that what worked Suraksha, no, for if in the favor of BJP, Suraksha, this ration and Hindutva dignity, and then the Modi image works a lot. Still, it is a very powerful, no, and so these all four factors couldn't work well, and they couldn't allow the narrative of dissent, Mahangai, Berojgari, etc., to throw BJP from the power, and you know the caste alliances also worked. BJP didn't lost its support of various castes, so it has a votes in various castes, and they all together form a big alliance. But if you see the result of other states like Punjab, like Goa and all, what they are saying that there are another alternative of BJP, that is Aam Aadmi Party, and that's going to create a problem for the Congress, because Congress, earlier people used to see Congress as an alternative of the BJP. Now there is a third stakeholder in the politics of the nation emerged, like Aam Aadmi Party. So these elections, exit polls are telling these things. And you know, people are of Uttar Pradesh. They all these issues which you talked, no, the issues of the Hathras, issues of the pigeon movement, no, they worked, but not much. They couldn't work as a people narrative, because people have a different kind of social reality.
And what does this mean? Do you feel for the opposition? Of course, we'll still wait for 10th of March for the final results. But this is something that is going to influence going forward an opposition unity or challenge to the BJP in 2024.
Maybe I think that may provide an opportunity for the opposition to regrouping itself against the BJP. And you know, the Aam Aadmi Party, but you know, there may be always two factors. Congress, even being weak, but it is not losing its relevance of the politics of India. So they will be the one pole, and the Aam Aadmi one pole, like Mamata Banerjee and others have also emerged, and there may be another pole, Aam Aadmi Party, with others, and the BJP. So there will be always a triangle. It's very difficult to form bipolar the next groupings of the Indian politics. But you know, as you know, the politics is always a war of contestations and the option. So it will always go. And what I used to say, that summer says hai, summer of the politics is still says, and it will go.
Right, on. Geeta Bhatt, coming back to Uttar Pradesh, there's already talk of Yogi Adityanath, coming back as the chief minister, etc. But should the BJP win with a much lower majority than the last time? Do you think that is something that is now in question? There's always been this talk of what Delhi feels and about Yogi Adityanath and this undercurrents that have been talked about. So do you think his position is safe?
Well, Gargi, I think, the political leadership of the party has always shown their confidence in Yogi Adityanath as the chief ministerial candidate. And that is the reason that his name was, announced well before the elections went ahead. This is for sure. And I also want to, Gargi, comment on one thing, is that in these, if whatever has been projected is true, then Punjab, what was also being talked about was that in if in Punjab Congress is going to get another electoral jolt, then the party leadership really needs to do some very serious thinking about their relevance, as a pan-India party in the country. And also, one will also have to look at what would be the consequences in terms of Aam Aadmi Party coming in a state like Punjab, which is a border state, and there are many questions which have been thrown by
was all raised during the campaigning as well, and if this indicates that clearly people want a change in Punjab perhaps. And very quickly, Badri Narayan, what do you feel this would indicate for the Congress?
I think Congress is in a crisis. No, Congress is in a crisis. Congress is trying hard. As you saw in Uttar Pradesh, Priyanka did a massive campaign, and it's a very well organized campaign, issue-based campaign. But it couldn't work out the ground because their language, their diction of politics are entirely different the way people think. There is a gap between the diction of the politics and the people aspiration. And that is because the makers of the Congress dictions are mostly the people those who have no connect with the people. So Congress need to revive its entire diction of doing politics. It always looks very nice. Ladki hu, ladti hu, lad sakti hu. It always looks very nice. It's very, I think, important issues which Congress raised, but it couldn't connect with the people because people have entirely different kind of aspirations. So that's they will have to nurse the leaders of the regional level, no? Like Amrinder Singh was a very competent leader, but they have just ousted him, and now or he resigned. Now they tried to grown up Channi, and Channi, because Punjab politics, as you know, Dalit are divided in two parts. This is the largest population of Dalits lives in Punjab, but there are two fractions of the Dalit community, and though both are opposed to each other, both usually vote opposite to each other. So it couldn't work. And every polarization has a counter polarization, Gargi. So there was a polarization in the favor of Congress, the polarization of marginal communities, but there was also counter polarization of the other communities against the Channis. So
all right. Well, lots to think about clearly for all parties, and the exit polls have thrown up all kinds of predictions. Of course, UP being the big one, returning with the BJP. We'll wait and see what happens on the 10th of March. Thank you so much for joining us on the program this morning.
Thank you.
Thank you. We'll slip into a short break now. On the other side, we'll get you the latest in Ukraine. Stay with us. Welcome back. Let's get to the latest on Russia's invasion of Ukraine that enters the 13th day today. Russia will carry out a ceasefire at 10 a.m. Moscow time today and open humanitarian corridors to evacuate citizens from strife-torn cities of Ukraine. That's Kiev, Chernigov, Sumy and Mariupol. This was said by Moscow's UN ambassador. The evacuation plan would be subject, however, to Ukraine's approval. Russian shelling is still preventing the evacuation of civilians from besieged cities. That's what Ukraine has said. Earlier ceasefires have failed. A third round of talks took place between the two sides with a Ukraine official. Those talks ended yesterday with a Ukraine official talking of minor progress towards the safe corridors for civilian evacuation. But while a negotiator from Kiev spoke of positive results, a Russian negotiator said their expectations were not fulfilled. Russian Deputy Prime Minister has warned Moscow that they could retaliate against European sanctions by cutting off natural gas to the bloc. Ukrainian President Zelensky said he would stay in Kiev for as long as it's necessary to win what he called a patriotic war. Zelensky accused Russia of violating agreements on humanitarian corridors, saying Russian troops mined the route agreed for delivery of aid. He also said that Ukraine would continue talks to reach peace in the country.
Будемо говорити, будемо наполягати на переговорах, поки не знайдемо спосіб сказати нашому народу: ось як ми прийдемо до миру. Я залишаюсь тут, Залишаюсь у Києві, на Банковій, не ховаючись, і нікого не боюсь, стільки, скільки потрібно, щоб перемогти у цій нашій вітчизняній війні.
Raising concerns over the worsening situation in Ukraine following Russia's invasion, India said the ensuing humanitarian crisis deserves immediate and urgent attention, and that India is concerned that the safe corridors have not materialized.
We are deeply concerned that despite our repeated urgings to both sides, the safe corridor for our students stranded in Sumy did not materialize. We have managed to facilitate the safe return of over 20,000 Indians from Ukraine. We have also assisted nationals from other countries who approached us in their return to their respective countries. And we will remain open to doing so in the coming days. More than 80 evacuation flights have been crisscrossing the skies to bring them home. We are appreciative of the assistance rendered by the authorities of Ukraine and its neighboring countries in facilitating their return.
Russia's UN ambassador said the corridors would be open to evacuate citizens from Kiev, Chernigov, Sumy and Mariupol at the UNSC. And that is the latest announcement made by Russia. It's still subject to whether Ukraine accepts the terms. And here's a report that was sent to us by ICTV on the situation in Ukraine.
During the 12 days of the war, the Russians killed 38 Ukrainian children. More than 70 kids were injured. In all, the bloody war has claimed more than 1,000 Ukrainians, the United Nations said. But obviously this is not a good price for the West to close the sky over us and thus stop attacks on Ukrainians from the air. The brave people of Ukraine have become a shield for Europe and the West. While we wash your peace with our blood and tears, and while we are still resisting. Meanwhile, our city of Kharkiv is being reduced to ashes every day. Only the day before, 7 military jets were flying over the city and it looked like just a game of hunting people. And I assure you, the horror of war was done. The crimes against Ukrainians, it is difficult to understand even for us. After all, it seems that this simply cannot and should not exist in the 21st century. But now we are fighting and we will cry after the battle. But the shaky support of the West and the main refusal to close the sky is doing such things with us.
Пришлите какую-то помощь, чтобы забрали.
Это так ты даешь зеленые коридоры и не убиваешь гражданских?
The enemy bombed the airport in Vinnytsia, whipped out our picturesque villages and prevented the ceasefire during the evacuation of residents from hotspots. People are being bombed and torn apart by whole families, fleeing the rescue squads. Russian fascists are killing our mayors so that they do not defend their territories. They want to break our spirit as much as possible. They want to create chaos on our land, which exists on their land for a long time. You still manage to wake up to the sound of birds or the noise of the city, not to the bombs and the sound of sirens. But the chances of your calm night and morning are less and less. As long as you procrastinate and allow this poison country to destroy this beautiful and majestic land of Europe, they will go deeper. Close the sky above us. Do not be complicit in this genocide against Ukrainians. Stop the murder. Natalie Lutsenko, ICTV Station, Kyiv.
Hello and welcome. You're watching Good Morning India. I'm Gargi Rawat. Well, the elections are finally over in 5 states, and now it's time to talk about the exit polls. That is until counting day on the 10th. Arvind Kejriwal's Aam Aadmi Party will sweep Punjab and Uttar Pradesh will stay firmly with the BJP, a poll of exit polls has predicted after voting ended for state elections, which are seen to be a semi-final ahead of the 2024 national election. The poll of polls predicted a hung house in both Goa and Uttarakhand, and BJP emerged as the largest party in Manipur. But of course, a health warning, exit polls often get it wrong. That has been seen in the past as well. Now let's take a look at Punjab, where the Aam Aadmi Party has done remarkably if exit polls are believed. Exit polls predicted a clear victory for the Aam Aadmi Party in Punjab, with the scale of the party's victory varying across various surveys. Several surveys predicted Arvind Kejriwal-led AAP, which is in power in Delhi, getting a landslide victory. The surveys also predicted that the ruling Congress would finish a distant second in the state, followed by the Shiromani Akali Dal, which had allied with the Bahujan Samaj Party. Now, if Aam Aadmi Party comes to power in Punjab, it would be a massive change, as Mr. Kejriwal's party would run a full state, unlike Delhi, which is a union territory. In Goa, a poll of exit polls indicates that both the BJP and Congress will end up with 16 seats each in the state assembly, leading for another hung assembly, as Goa has a 40-member house. So much like the cliffhanger in 2017, it could be a hung assembly. That's what's been indicated by an aggregate of 9 exit polls. The kingmaker would be Mamata Banerjee's Trinamool Congress, which is contesting in the coastal state for the first time in an attempt to build a pan-India image. Now, for Uttarakhand, a poll of polls has predicted a close contest between the BJP and Congress with 34 and 32 seats respectively. Uttarakhand has 70 seats. An average of 10 available exit polls shows a close contest between the BJP and Congress, with BJP at a slight edge. Well, to talk more about these exit polls, we're joined now by Smita Gupta, senior journalist, and Desh Ratan Nigam, political analyst and someone who supports the BJP. Smita Gupta, first to you, what do you have to say about what exit polls has predicted, the poll of exit polls, and of course with all the health warnings?
Well, I think the clearest verdict that emerges from the exit polls is that of Punjab, because it predicts a landslide victory for the Aam Aadmi Party. And as you pointed out, if the exit polls are right, if the Aam Aadmi Party has got this landslide victory and it forms a government in Punjab, I think it marks a kind of turning in Indian politics, because the Aam Aadmi Party is very different from any of the other existing political parties. It's a non-ideological party which has always focused purely on governance issues, governance, health, education, of which we have seen an example in Delhi. We have also to see that in Goa, the Aam Aadmi Party has managed to get about a few seats. So could this be the beginning of something new in Indian politics? I don't know. So I think that's number one. Number two, of course, I mean, UP is the state that everybody is looking at, because as it is famously said, the road to Delhi is via Lucknow. And if the BJP has won this election in the way it has, it is a pointer to what could happen in 2024. It makes the BJP's return in 2024 that much, more certain.
And it would be, so that it would have gone against any anti-incumbency. The BJP has been talking about good governance, and that is what has played out on the ground. Their delivery on various welfare schemes, they're claiming have played out on the ground. And what does this mean, for caste calculations? And Akhilesh Yadav and all his, various caste calculations. He's used all the permutation combinations in the last couple of years, hasn't he?
No, I won't say that caste hasn't played a role in this election.
Sure, no, not saying that either.
One is to go by the exit polls, because in 2017, the Samajwadi Party with the Congress got about a third of the seats that is being predicted for it by the exit polls today. They were about 54 together. And today, most of the polls are giving them at least the Samajwadi Party-led coalition around 150 average. Yes. So clearly, you cannot say that, they've trebled their vote.
All right, let's get in Desh Ratan now. Desh Ratan Nigam, what would you have to say about these exit polls and showing BJP holding on to Uttar Pradesh and but hung assemblies in Goa as well as Uttarakhand?
Gargi, in fact, if you minutely look at the exit polls and believing them to be true with all the riders, as you pointed out,
yes,
then I think the clearest verdict is from Punjab, UP and Manipur. The rest of the two places is the BJP has an advantage. And it is my belief, and that's what I perceive, is that BJP is going to form government in 4 states. And let me tell you, Punjab, I am somehow very skeptical about the exit polls. There will be a hung assembly with BJP playing a role in the formation of the government. Please I'm being very careful in saying my words, because the ground reports are there that in the last 1 month, the BJP Amrinder Singh combined has lifted the election, and they were in contest in about 30 seats, out of which 10 to 15 seats are the ones where they can win. And that is the ground report that one is getting. And the booth management of the Aadmi party, despite all the exit polls that are showing, was very, very poor, and their booths were almost empty in most of the places in Punjab. So we don't know exactly what is the real, outcome. And especially in Punjab, it happened in the last time when everybody predicted that the Aadmi party is winning. But this time too, Shiromani Akali Dal has come up in a big way out there. And
there were some predictions on that, given the AAP and Congress fight in so many seats, that Akali Dal had done better than imagined. Smita Gupta, so again, these are exit polls, but yes, there have been reports that there could be, some sort of situation in Punjab as well, where you're going to have parties scrambling to form these post-poll alliances.
Well, there are all kinds of reports coming from the ground. But I think if there was one report that most reporters were bringing from Punjab, it was that the AAP was ahead of the other parties.
Which in itself is remarkable for such a young party.
It is absolutely remarkable, because I can't remember whether it was the last Lok Sabha or the one before that, when they managed to get 4 Lok Sabha seats from Punjab. And that was the first indication that they were making some inroads in that state. And which is why I heard some AAP person yesterday on television who was, quite enthused by the fact that they've got a few seats in Goa. Because, as they said, they're sort of moving ahead slowly. And if the rise of the AAP will also be at the expense of the Congress party. Because as you see in Delhi, for instance, ever since the AAP came to rule Delhi, the Congress has been wiped out. Is that going to happen in Punjab? That's a big question.
And coming back to UP.
Yeah. And as far as UP is concerned, you said that the welfare schemes had helped the BJP. Yes, I would agree that the free rations would, if the results are correct, the free rations would have played a very big role, because during the pandemic, for the poorest of the poor, it was a kind of helpline. But I would say that the BJP deployed 2 strategies. Had a 2-point kind of campaign. One was related to the welfare programs, especially the free rations. And the second was that 80-20 discourse.
Yes.
That they kept talking about improving law and order, but it was a coded kind of discourse, because what it meant was that we put the Muslims in their place. Because whenever you asked any BJP person to kind of explain what they meant by law and order having improved, and if that is true, and if that has helped the BJP win this election, that is not a good sign for Indian democracy.
Desh Ratan, your reaction to that, though now everybody, supporting the BJP is talking about the welfare, the development, and how that has helped, the continuity, the stability, etc., etc. But in the background, you've had these sort of statements being made on the campaign trail.
Gargi, in fact, first let me comment on Punjab, which the point that I missed was that the Punjab politics is governed by Dera politics. And that is where the Aam Aadmi Party is losing. None of the deras I have seen and are with the Aam Aadmi Party. And the deras are with either with the BJP or with the Shiromani Akali Dal or some with the Congress. That is one aspect that people are missing out. Secondly, if I talk about UP, believe me, it will be a sweep for BJP. The ground reports are very clear indicators. One, as people talked about welfare schemes, the silent majority out there who benefited from welfare schemes are actually silent. They are quiet because they come from the weaker sections of the society. And secondly, the women power. Today is International Women's Day. The women power, please remember, there's an overwhelming majority and a gap between Samajwadi Party and the BJP, and they are voting for BJP overwhelmingly. About 48% of the population in UP is of that of women. And imagine overwhelming people, women coming out and voting for BJP. That is going to change the entire scenario. And the law and order, yes, you have cited the isolated incidents, but the overall law and order situation has been seen tremendous improvement in UP. And that was actually the talk during the entire campaign. And people said they could walk out in the night whenever they wanted, and especially the women. They said, we feel so free. And Muslim women, please remember, they are coming out, although they say something else on the television when the cameras are there, but they're going inside and voting for BJP. And remember my words,
we'll have to wait and see for 10th of March to see if that indeed is true. But thank you so much both for joining us on the program. As we said, all the health warnings, and do tune in for the results on the 10th of March here on NDTV. Now, let's talk about what the leaders are up to. And Priyanka Gandhi Vadra was in Rajasthan. She was in Jaipur ostensibly to flag off a marathon on Women's Day. But more importantly are the political ramifications and speculations around this visit. She met with the Chief Minister, whose political advice she values. And there's also talk of the Congress wanting to sequester some of its MLAs, given that some of the states like Goa and Uttarakhand are said to be heading for a hung assembly. Let's just listen into what she had to say.
तो उम्मीद यही है कि जनता सोच समझ के अपना वोट दिया होगा जनता ने, और जनता सही निर्णय लेगी। उम्मीद तो यही है हर जगह से। देखिए, जब परिस्थितियां बनेंगी तभी तो देखेंगे क्या होगा। अभी तो चुनाव के रिजल्ट आएंगे पहले, उसके बाद देखेंगे। मैं यूपी में व्यस्त रही हूँ, मैंने देखा नहीं है कि गहलोत जी का क्या बजट है। आप गहलोत जी से पूछिए, आप हर चीज भविष्य में पूछ रहे हैं, तो मैं अभी कैसे क्या होगा।
All right, so that is what Priyanka Gandhi had to say to the media. But yes, Harsha, so a lot of speculation around her meeting with Ashok Gehlot.
Yes, exactly, because, she spent over an hour at the Chief Minister's residence. She had dinner with him yesterday. And, given the astute politician that Ashok Gehlot is, clearly a lot of things on that menu. So one of them is, of course, post-poll scenario. And we all know that if, the results throw up some kind of a hung or fractured assembly, or even places where alliances are possible, clearly in UP, the writing is on the wall. We all know who the Congress is going to ally with. The SP is a very, very possible ally. For the other states, not so clear, but like you were saying, Uttarakhand and Goa, possible alliances. So all this was definitely, we've been told, discussed with Ashok Gehlot yesterday, last evening, where she spent over an hour at the Chief Minister's residence. Also the possibility of ring fencing MLAs. Now, Rajasthan is not just famous for tourism, but also for political tourism. This is a Congress government, and the best place really, if the Congress wants to tuck its MLAs away so they don't get poached, Rajasthan is going to be the absolutely obvious destination, and plenty here to keep the MLAs occupied. So those two things were definitely on the menu in that meeting with Priyanka Gandhi. She's gone back, she's left early this morning. So clearly her visit was more political than anything else.
All right, then to do with the flagging of a marathon for Women's Day. Thanks so much, Harsha, for joining us with those details. Well, we'll slip into a short break now. On the other side, we'll get you the latest from Ukraine. It's the 13th day of Russia's invasion.